intentionally started to hit the camera house or kick the tripod. And actually, by doing that, by somehow using violence against the tool I was using, was also kind of mentally, the process was important for me, emotionally as well. So I can say that it was a lot of anger and rage still in me during this first project. And yeah, it was important for me. It was a black and white, that I used the black and white images for also accentuate the kind of horrifying experience, or how to say. So it started with a very personal point of view. I actually find myself drawn to my safe childhood places. This is where I started to photograph, and wasn't intentionally going to be about this subject, I must say, from the beginning. I wasn't sure what it was, but I just felt that was important for me. And of course, because I worked very long with this. I started 2012, and I think the series was ready not until 2017.
Oh, wow.
And of course, on the road, I realized what this is all about. So to picture my safe childhood places were to, also show that the home should be very safe, right? And in a relationship where there is violence and repeated act of violence, the home gets very unsafe, right? And a place where you don't find peace. And so this was something that I was thinking of, like hideaways, yeah. To those were the places where I went mentally to hide. But then during the process and the project, I actually started when it was super cold. It was winter, and I had like really long exposure times, like up to 45 minutes sometimes. And during that exposure time, I was cold and was freezing. And I was once stumbling over the tripod. So it was like affecting, And I thought, I'll continue to exposure. And I saw the result, that it made something, and it somehow the result accentuated what I was interested about, to try to picture the emotional atmosphere. Yeah. So I just saw that it was something good, and I think I'm very open to say that most of my works are, sometimes by mistakes you stumble into a new path, and I think this is something that I want to highlight also. I think it's super interesting and fascinating, how it works. Also, the unfinished approach, or the result, can be surprising surprisingly good sometimes.
Yeah. They
So
call them happy accidents.
absolutely
Yeah.
happy accident.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
one of them. Then I continued the same way. So I intentionally started to hit the camera house or kick the tripod, and actually by doing that, by somehow um, using violence against the tool I was using, was also kind of mentally, the process was important for me, emotionally as well. So I can say that it was a lot of anger and rage still in me during this first project, and I yeah, it was important for me. It was a black and white, that I used the black and white uh, images for also accentuate um, the kind of horrifying experience, or how to say, yeah.
I think you did a good job with that. You So I'm seeing you. You know, you've got this great meditative practice. You're using a process that slows you down intentionally. You're thinking, and you were kind of in this meditative state. I do a lot of meditation myself, and so sometimes when you get down into those places and you allow yourself to be open and just explore, you
Mm.
make discoveries that you didn't know were there, and you don't really understand it yet until you kind of continue that process. And as you unfold you make a discovery. And with you, what I'm hearing is that you were using a camera to do that.
Yeah,
You were using a camera to kind of unfold this thing that was underneath, and you weren't sure yet, and then you found it.
yeah,
And it took this form, and it's from what I'm in my research, it's this project called Unseen Circumstances, and it has about 5 different manifestations of that project. One is this one where you were kicking and the tripod, and it's almost a performative act that has a an artifact at the end, you know, like a almost like an imprint of itself, and it's so poetic. Just all in that because of the nature of the subject matter, because it leaves an impact, it leaves an impression. And so
mm.
it's a really really interesting manifestation. What other series kind of tie up into that, and then we can jump to those here in a second.
Yeah. um, um, so after the black and white, the Most Intimate Hideaways series, so where I used the landscape as a, how to say, depicting the feelings and atmospheres. But in the end, I wanted to try out if I could use a model like somebody, a sense of uh, a person. Um, so I did. I asked my artist friend if she could fall down in a river, or a ditch. It was actually a more of a ditch, but it was interesting to see if that could be added to the series. And I saw that I really liked what I saw. It became I will show it later. It became a very abstract image, but that led me to the conclusion that I could include women who are like falling for me, and that was the next series. And I wanted to have that in color to somehow um, almost beautify the act. Because another thing is that in most okay, so I started from a victim perspective. And that is important. I think I wanted to be honest and tell my own story. But I think in it remains kind of static um, if you continue from that perspective. And I wanted to, generally speaking, about the issues and the multifaceted issue this is. For example, you asking the women to fall for me. So I wanted to recreate a violent act, but to take it out in the landscape, that anybody could see it, or anybody had a chance to react, and also the fact that the perpetrator is invisible. That was something that I was started to be very interested to somehow visually explore. And that's why the Fallen Grace series, how it was created. And you mentioned this performative strategy, and that is a really something that is really important for me becoming. And I saw it from the first series, and I've been somehow continuing with that, with the women falling, and then after that these burning dresses, and actually now I'm continuing, but with substances that are flying in the air or otherwise interacting with a person.
I think you did a great job setting this up and and getting us ready to see what we're about to see. And so,
Yeah,
like, I'm very interested in seeing this next series. So let's take a look at some of those images. Let's share our screen,
yeah,
and
okay,
let's kind of dive into that visual language, because I think you've done um, you've created some kind of visual poetry. And so like you're expressing something that sometimes is hard to express. And
yeah,
I want to dive into this idea of victim mentality and victim perspective,
mm,
because that is really interesting. And I'm curious about your evolution there.
yeah.
And did it evolve into the project? Did it evolve the way you were thinking about this?
I would say that, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let's
Yeah,
dive in and let's dive into
yeah.
that, because I'm very curious about that.
Okay,
Um,
let's see. Share. So this is, I will show three pictures from my personal story, The Most Intimate Hideaways. And to the series belongs 15 pictures, and actually also some poetry. I made a booklet where I put them all together, but they have also been exhibiting separately, just images. Um, so this is a hideaway, and what I was looking for was really like somewhere to hide, literally. And as I said earlier, that these are my safe from my safe childhood places. Uh, so I've been walking in the landscape before I took any photos. From time to time, walk a lot in the landscape and looking for locations. And when I decided where to take the photos, I come back another day when the light is right, and so on, um, and take the photo. So yeah, this is where I explained the procedure I had by long exposure times and kicking the camera house, or hitting the camera house, or kicking the tripod. Um, so to say, to create an atmosphere of fear, or loneliness, or you feel helpless, and yeah.
It is extremely ominous feeling, but it's conflicting too to me
Yeah.
because it's aesthetically beautiful. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's also, there's so much symbolism buried in here. Winter, of course, you know, snow on the ground and no leaves.
Yeah.
It's got its own aesthetic, and then the black and white. You're almost confronted with that that feeling, and so it's really really strong. And what's interesting about this is this isn't like motion blur. When you kick in a long exposure, the camera repositions itself, and so this is um, it's wow. It's a really interesting thought there. I'm now kind of hearing a little bit about the background and stuff that to see it kind of buried in this image. That other one too, the one previous is really really interesting too. I really enjoy this image.
Thank you.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So
You can get
there,
lost there, looking
yeah,
up
like,
into those leaves and those
yeah,
branches.
yeah.
Yeah, and
So
it's
nature can be both, as I understood it. For me, nature is a place of source and restness, and where I, you know, recover. Um, but some see them really threatening as well. So, and when, of course, talking about the subject, a hideaway is not a beautiful place, right? If you have to
usually
hide,
no,
yeah, if you
no.
want to hide from somewhere, that means you don't see the beauty in it. So
Yeah, and in the flipping of the safe space.
yeah,
Usually home is safe space. That
yeah,
I'm home, is the
yeah,
safe space. And
exactly.
now you're like, I'm in the forest and that's the safe space. But
Yeah,
for generations up until now, being in the forest was dangerous. It was not
exactly. Yeah,
especially at night and in the winter, you're putting yourself at peril.
yeah,
And who knows what's out there that could get you. And so like to have that flipped on its head. Oh, wow.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And the last picture is the one I said that where I wanted to try if a person could be part of the series, and I actually included it. I was very unsure for a very long time, but then I think that it somehow gives something to the series. And this is also I can tell you a happy accident, negative, but yeah, I used
Yeah.
to to use them anyway.
Wow.
Yeah,
It's quite stunning. And stunning in the way of um it's got a lot buried into it. Wow. That's wow.
yeah,
You,
yeah.
I'm rarely speechless, and I'm on a podcast, and so
Yeah.
I love these, and
Mm.
I've seen this kind of multiple exposure approach, but knowing a little bit about the story and stuff like that, it's you're talking to me in a way that's really powerful and profound, and so I'm quite enjoying this.
Yeah,
Um,
thank you.